Meet King Ahab, the man who sold his soul for power and pleasure. With a reign marked by corruption, idolatry, and bloodshed, Ahab's legacy is one of unbridled ambition and devastating consequences. Yet, beneath the surface of his wicked deeds lies a complex and tragic figure, driven by a hunger for validation and a desperate attempt to fill the void left by his own spiritual emptiness. Join me as we delve into the tumultuous life of King Ahab, a cautionary tale of the destructive power of pride, greed, and the unquenchable thirst for control. The people of Israel became the people of God when Yahweh, their sovereign God, gave the 10 Commandments to Moses on Mount Sinai. Which of the 10 Commandments, literally in Hebrew, the 10 utterances, are most absolutely required? Answer: you must believe number 1 and act on number 2. Number 1 is, I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt. Number 2 is, you shall have no other gods but me. That's where King Ahab fell. Though he was the 7th king of Israel and ought to have known better, King Ahab took up another god than Yahweh, worshiping that god is equal to or greater than Yahweh. King Ahab had 2 problems. 1. He could be manipulated. 2. He had a forceful wife. He was married to none other than Jezebel. Jezebel was the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. Ethbaal became king by murdering his predecessor at Tyre, thus providing him the kingship of all the Phoenician cities. The royal marriage between Ahab and Jezebel may have benefited Ahab by binding Israel with Tyre. It also may have occurred at just the right time for King Ahab, when Aramean powers of Syria were threatening Israel's coastal cities. So, modern readers may consider King Ahab's marriage a political triumph. But is that so? Were all of Jezebel's gifts to her husband and her urgency to manipulate his behavior equally beneficial? Nowadays, Jezebel is often condemned. Who would want her as a wife? Her seductive ways, excessive personal beautification, manipulation of others even to the extent of having them killed, and excitement to acquire whatever power she could. These may be accurate historical characterizations. Jezebel was, after all, a woman who seethed to be queen and was the daughter of a murderous father, a father whose family history illustrated at least one way to become ruler. However, from the biblical point of view, Jezebel's most appalling sin was worse than murder. It was idolatry. The people of Israel may have been affronted by Jezebel's sexual, political, and criminal behavior. Among other things, she engineered the murder of Naboth, whose orchard King Ahab wanted for his garden and could not get it legally. So, Jezebel got the orchard for her husband anyway by having the man Naboth killed. 1 Kings 21 verses 1-16. That was bad. But what may have been even worse was Jezebel's theological cluelessness, or even worse, her rebelliousness. Jezebel was clueless because she forced her husband to build altars for the Canaanite god Baal. She also forced him to erect Ashrim near the altars, sacred pillars that symbolized fertility and represented the pagan mother goddess Asherah, the consort of the pagan senior god El. Jezebel was rebellious because, along with forcing her husband to build the altars and the Ashrim, she also forced him to worship Baal and Asherah. Can you believe it? Jezebel made the king of Israel worship pagan gods. Remember Jezebel's murder of Naboth? Yahweh was angry about this, and he sent word to King Ahab as a prophecy. Since Ahab had taken possession of Naboth's orchard unjustly, the Lord said, in the spot where dogs had licked up Naboth's blood after he was stoned to death, so, too, would dogs lick King Ahab's blood. A time came when King Ahab and King Jehoshaphat of Judah went to battle against Syrian forces at Ramoth-Gilead. Ahab persuaded Jehoshaphat that he, Ahab, would disguise himself and go into the battle so he could not be identified, but that Jehoshaphat must ride into the battle in his finest robes and armor. When the Syrian forces saw the glorious-looking king in his magnificent chariot, they assumed he must be King Ahab, and they attacked him. But Jehoshaphat persuaded them that he was not the king, so they turned away. At about that point in the battle, a Syrian bowman shot a random arrow, penetrating the disguised chest of King Ahab. Ahab ordered his charioteer to take him out of the battle and prop him up in his chariot so he could watch the battle. Later in the evening, that is where Ahab died. The blood of Ahab's death wound flowed onto the bottom of the chariot, and when his body was returned to Samaria for burial, His blood was washed away with water drawn from the pool of Samaria. The dogs licked up his blood from the same place they had licked Naboth's blood, and the prostitutes washed in it too.